He stepped inside that night and cried for an hour. But the next morning, something changed. He woke on a real mattress, washed his face in a sink, made toast, and when he looked in the mirror, he saw a man again, not a ghost. Later that week, Evelyn helped him fill out paperwork for senior housing programs. She even drove him to a local nonprofit that helped veterans. He hadn't mentioned his Navy service in years. Just a cook, he'd say. But the woman at the office smiled and said, "Still served. That counts." They began planning for the future. But then, a letter arrived. It was from his daughter, Julia. "Dad," it read, "I heard from someone at church that you've been going through a hard time. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. If you're willing, I'd love to talk. Maybe heal." Walter collapsed into Evelyn's arms, sobbing. Have you ever thought no one would ever come back for you? And then they did? 6 weeks later, Walter stood at Julia's porch in Indianapolis, flowers in hand, coat zipped up. The door opened, and there she was. Her eyes just like Maggie's. They cried. They talked for hours. About the past, the pain, the time they'd lost. Julia introduced him to her kids, his grandkids, for the first time. He held them like they were made of glass. Back in Ohio, Evelyn kept the cottage ready. But now, Walter had options. A family again, a second chance, a warm bed. He still met Evelyn at Ruby's once a week, still shared stories, still brought her flowers from time to time. "You saved me," he told her one morning. "No," she replied with a soft smile. "You just needed someone to remind you that you mattered." Have you ever been saved by a stranger's kindness? Today, Walter volunteers twice a week at a local shelter, handing out socks and sandwiches. And every time he sees someone sitting alone in the cold, he remembers the knock that changed his life. And knocks back. Has kindness ever changed your life? Tell us in the comments. Your story might be our next video. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to The Kind Story for more emotional true life stories every week. Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction or dramatized for entertainment purposes. While it may be inspired by real human emotions and events, all characters, names, and situations are fictional or modified for storytelling. This content fully complies with YouTube's community guidelines and is intended to inspire, not mislead. Originality claim. This story is a 100% original creation written exclusively for The Kind Story YouTube channel. All characters, settings, and events are fictional or dramatized for emotional impact. This content complies fully with YouTube's July 2025 monetization guidelines regarding originality and authenticity. Into the silence. And so, another day began. Another day of waiting, wondering, aching, and praying that maybe, just maybe, someone would see him. "Please, Maggie," he whispered, voice cracking, "just send me a little luck from up there." He pulled the blanket back over his legs and wept. Like this story so far? Hit like and subscribe for more emotional true stories from The Kind Story. It really helps us reach others who need a little hope. The knock came just before noon. Walter had drifted off, head tilted against the window, a newspaper covering his chest. He woke with a jolt, startled, embarrassed, blinking against the blur of daylight. A woman stood outside the car, knocking gently again. She was in her early 60s maybe, wearing a red winter coat, her gray curls tucked under a knit cap. A grocery bag dangled from one wrist, and her eyes weren't looking away. They were steady, warm. "Sir," she said, her voice muffled by the window. "Are you okay?" Walter didn't move at first. People didn't knock. They stared, or avoided, or called security. But this woman had a softness in her face, not pity. concern. He cracked the window just an inch. "Yeah, just resting." "Are you sleeping in there?" Walter hesitated. Pride wrestled with exhaustion. But eventually, he nodded once. The woman looked down, then gently placed her hand on the window ledge. "My name's Evelyn. I've seen you here a few times. I brought you a sandwich and some fruit. Would that be all right?" Walter stared. No one had brought him anything in weeks. Not since an old man from church dropped off a blanket and never returned. Walter's throat tightened. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I know," Evelyn replied, gently. "But I wanted to." She handed the bag through the crack in the window. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, a granola bar, and a thermos of something warm. Walter took it slowly. His hands trembled. "Thank you," he whispered. Evelyn smiled. "What's your name?" "Walter." "Well, Walter, would you like to join me for a coffee? There's a diner right across the street. My treat. And they've got those little peppermint creamers I like." Walter hesitated again. I'm not exactly dressed for diners." Evelyn grinned. "Honey, they let me in every week. They'll survive." He chuckled, the first time in days, and nodded. Minutes later, they were seated in a booth at Ruby's Diner, next to a window that overlooked the parking lot. Walter cradled the mug of hot coffee in both hands like it was a sacred relic. Evelyn ordered a Reuben and insisted Walter get something warm, chili, and cornbread. He protested weakly. She insisted. Over that meal, something opened. Walter spoke in fragments. About the fire, about the eviction, about Maggie, who died of lymphoma in 21, about the daughter he hadn't spoken to since they disagreed about hospice care, about the Dart, his old work car, now doubling as his bedroom. Evelyn listened. Not just heard, listened. Like a friend. Like someone who wasn't planning to rush away. She didn't gasp, didn't flinch. Just nodded softly, her hands wrapped around her mug. "Have you ever felt completely invisible in your own hometown?" Walter asked. Evelyn looked at him, eyes glistening. "Yes," she said. "After my husband passed, I'd go days without speaking to anyone. I'd sit in that diner booth and just exist." Walter leaned back, stunned. Evelyn smiled. "I guess we're not so different, you and me." And in that moment, a warmth spread through Walter's chest that had nothing to do with the chili. In the days that followed, Evelyn kept showing up, first with fresh socks and a new thermos, then with a travel-sized hygiene kit, toothpaste, hand wipes, deodorant, nothing fancy. She said, "But dignity fits in small packages." Walter chuckled, even blushed a little. By the end of the week, they were sharing a booth at Ruby's every morning. The waitress, Carol, began greeting them with a wink. "Your usual table, lovebirds?" Walter would turn beet red. Evelyn just laughed. They talked about everything. Walter shared memories of the factory, his love for jazz records, the way Maggie used to sing while making biscuits. Evelyn talked about her garden, her late husband's love for woodworking, and her part-time job at the library. "Why are you helping me?" Walter asked one morning, voice cracking. Evelyn paused. "My son used to be like you. Lived in his car after he lost his job. He wouldn't let me help. Said it was pride. I lost him before I could make things right." Walter looked away, heart aching. "I couldn't save him," she said quietly. "But maybe I can be kind to someone who still needs it." He reached across the table, gently squeezed her hand. "Maybe. We save each other." From that day, the bond deepened. Evelyn invited Walter to the Sunday service at her church. At first, he declined. But on a chilly morning, she appeared at his car window again, holding a clean jacket and a pair of new shoes. "They were my husband's," she said softly. "I think he'd want you to have them." Walter stared at the items, then at her. "You don't even know me." She smiled. "Not yet, but I'd like to." He went with her, sat in the back pew, wept quietly during the hymns. Have you ever felt like your soul was being gently stitched back together, one word, one gesture at a time? Walter did, and it felt like hope. One evening, after church, Evelyn drove Walter to the edge of town. They pulled into a small driveway next to a white cottage with blue shutters. "What's this?" Walter asked. She turned off the engine. "There's a guest house in the back. My late husband built it before he passed. It's been empty ever since." Walter's heart began to pound. "You're not suggesting?" "I am," she said. "It has heat, a bed, a kitchen, and you'd have privacy. No rent. Just take care of the place." Walter's eyes filled with tears. I can't accept that." "You can," she whispered. "And I won't take no." The frost had crept in again. Thin sheets of ice webbed across the windshield like delicate glass veins. The old Dodge Dart sat parked in the corner of a cracked Walmart lot in upstate Ohio. Headlights fogged from nights of cold and condensation. Inside, bundled in a threadbare coat and an army surplus blanket, a man stirred awake with a low grunt. His name was Walter Langley, 71 years old, and for the past 5 nights, this car had been his only home. The morning sun hadn't yet broken through the haze. Walter's hands trembled as he reached toward the glove box, retrieving a crumpled pack of saltines and a disposable coffee cup half filled with cold, bitter brew from yesterday. He sipped it anyway. The metallic taste of desperation lingered behind every swallow. A woman pushing a shopping cart glanced at him, then quickly looked away. Walter had known that look. He'd seen it 1,000 times this week, pity laced with discomfort. The kind of glance people give a lost dog at a gas station, unsure whether to offer help or walk faster. He rubbed his swollen knees. His joints throbbed from the cold. His lower back ached from the curve of the car seat, and he hadn't properly stretched in days. His breath fogged up the air as he muttered to himself, "I was a foreman for 32 years. Now I'm just an old man people avoid." What happened? 2 months ago, he was renting a modest duplex on Chestnut Avenue, living off Social Security and a little pension. But when the furnace went out and the landlord ignored his calls, Walter took matters into his own hands and tried fixing it. The gas line ruptured. The fire was small, but the damages weren't. He wasn't insured. And when the city came knocking, so did eviction papers. With no close family left, his wife, Maggie, gone 4 winters ago, and their only daughter, Julia, estranged, Walter found himself packing what little he owned into garbage bags and the trunk of the Dart. Have you ever watched your whole life vanish into a car trunk? Walter had, and it changed something in him. That morning, he shuffled out of the driver's seat, stretching beneath the pale sky. His coat flapped open in the wind. He was wearing 3 shirts, 2 pairs of pants and socks that hadn't been washed in a week. He glanced toward the Walmart doors, debating whether to go in and warm up, but he didn't want to draw attention again. Last time, a teenager filmed him in the bread aisle and laughed with his friends. Walter pretended not to notice, but he saw. He always saw. "Old fool," he muttered, rubbing his cracked knuckles. He wandered toward the sidewalk where the sun was just beginning to touch the pavement. The warmth felt like grace. He closed his eyes. Then he heard a car pass, and someone yelled, "Get a job, loser!" Have you ever been humiliated by a stranger's words and had no way to defend yourself? Walter didn't yell back. He just turned toward his car and got inside, again, like a man folding himself back.